Hello, thank you again for tuning in to another wine tasting with Vinosseur. Tonight we're featuring a wine from Austria, a small country that we tend to overlook when we select our wines from whatever place we buy our wines from. I am beginning to appreciate quite a bit Austrian wine. The production is quite low per hectare, which means that the quality is typically quite high. Tonight we'll taste a wine by Weingut Bründlmayer that lays about 70 kilometers northwest of Vienna, so in the region called Kamptal. In Austria, most of the vineyards, I should say pretty much all of the winemaking vineyards and districts are on the eastern side of Austria, and of course this is no exception, but this is northwest of Vienna, keep that in mind. The grape is Grüner Veltliner. That is probably the most important grape variety in Austria in terms of quality wine production. And if many of you haven't tasted Grüner Veltliner, you can expect, in a good example, to get fairly high acidity, perhaps some notes that might remind you a bit of a Riesling, and also a bit green notes, perhaps some pear, some cabbage, you know, some green notes in general. So let me show you the bottle. This is the Grüner Veltliner from Bründlmayer, vintage 2007, and bring it a little closer there. So we're going to open this, and like you see more and more these days with white wines from Austria and Germany, you get a little twist off. And again, we've had discussions about screw caps. I'm not sure how I feel long term about screw caps. Seem to keep the wine quite fresh when young, so I'm not necessarily opposed to them, but there are a lot of issues to consider. Give that a smell. It smells just fine. I don't smell the reduction that I can smell often with screw capped wines, but pour some in the glass and see. You'll notice it's a quite light color. I could put a white background behind it to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Young wines, especially from the northern countries, winemaking countries, tend to be quite light in color when young. Can you see that? They may even possess a slight greenish tint when they're very young, but quite light, a little spritzy looking. Get a dash of minerality is the first thing I noticed, or perhaps those are the infamous volatile sulfur compounds. We can discuss that perhaps in a future video. I do get some very underripe pear notes on this wine. Citrus, both lemon and lime actually, I get both of those fruits. And some of the green notes I'm talking about, in this case, are quite delicate. Maybe some slight basil and some other type of herbs coming through on the nose. It smells quite clean, quite fresh, and delicate. Actually, in many of the Grüners I've tasted, the green notes come out a bit more than I'm getting here. This is would be an interesting wine to take on a blind tasting. Again, the minerals falling in the background there, but a lot of citrus, with some light green herbs on the front. Let's give that a taste and see how this is. Very elegant, great concentration, super high acidity, which actually comes in about 5 seconds after spitting or swallowing, in your case perhaps. Acidity comes in nice and clean towards the sides of the tongue and into the back of the tongue. Slight green notes, as I expect on a Grüner, but quite an elegant Grüner Veltliner. Good concentration. I do feel the alcohol just a tad. I wouldn't say it's offensive in any way, just it's young and perhaps would be better with some food. It's 12.5%, so it's not terribly high. That doesn't mean, by the way, that you're not supposed to feel the alcohol. You can feel alcohol at 10%. It just has to do with the balance in a wine. Good fruit all the way through, from the beginning to the end. I'm getting those pears again. Those green pears, you know, the ones you bite into that are firm and they're still crisp and crunchy. They're not super sweet. Or perhaps you've had those Asian pears that are more round. When you bite into them, they're again crisp and firm, but quite juicy. Actually, that's probably the closest I can get to describing the flavors I'm getting are those Asian pears. The residual sugar in this is quite low. I wouldn't say it's any more than 2 to 4 grams per liter residual sugar. So that puts it at about as dry as your average Sancerre, of course made with Sauvignon Blanc. Let's give that another taste. I'm quite impressed. Great concentration. This is a wine that costs about 140 kroner in Norway, which means if you find it in the States, you're looking at probably between $18 and $20. I think this is beautiful. It's a great alternative to people who like to drink Riesling but may prefer some more interesting notes. I don't mean better notes, but definitely more interesting, especially with those green herbs. So an Asian pear with a little bit of basil, that's my best way of saying this. The acidity is that of like a lemon or a lime. Really clean, very elegant wine. Pairing, if you're ever going to have some seafood, but you're going to have some green with that seafood. For example, tonight I'll make some salmon that I'll grill on in a pan. And salmon can be tricky to pair, but I think it'll work well with this. And then I'll put it on a bed of sautéed zucchini and eggplant or aubergine. And I think that, and some, what do you call, leeks. So I think that'll be quite an interesting combination. I think it'll stand up quite well to food. It's a well-made wine. It's got tremendous concentration. I would say that's the key on this particular wine. The concentration from the entry to the finish. The finish, by the way, is at least 20 seconds. Concentration is quite good. So this is my first time tasting this wine, and I actually I would buy it again. I think it's a well-made wine. If I didn't mention it before, Bründlmayer uses organic farming. Again, that's a big plus in my book. I tend to select smaller producers that farm organically. You get usually a better selection of grapes as well. Anyway, pick one up. I think you'll be quite impressed. Thanks for watching.